she is becoming a creature of the moor. But as her body grows stronger, the secrets of the house grow louder. Tonight, we listen for a sound that isn't the wind, a sound hidden deep within the stone corridors. Lean in close to the fire. The giant outside is beating at the windows. Chapter 5: The Cry in the Corridor. At first, each day which passed by for Mary Lennox was exactly like the others. Every morning she awoke in her tapestried room and found Martha kneeling upon the hearth, building her fire. Every morning she ate her breakfast in the nursery, which had nothing amusing in it, and after each breakfast she gazed out of the window across to the huge moor, which seemed to spread out on all sides and climb up to the sky. And after she had stared for a while, she realized that if she did not go out, she would have to stay in and do nothing, and so she went out. She did not know that this was the best thing she could have done, and she did not know that when she began to walk quickly or even run along the paths and down the avenue, she was stirring her slow blood and making herself stronger by fighting with the wind which swept down from the moor. She ran only to make herself warm, and she hated the wind which rushed at her face and roared and held her back, as if it were some giant she could not see. But the big breaths of rough, fresh air blown over the heather filled her lungs with something which was good for her whole thin body, and whipped some red color into her cheeks, and brightened her dull eyes when she did not know anything about it. But after a few days spent almost entirely out of doors, she wakened one morning knowing what it was to be hungry, and when she sat down to her breakfast, she did not glance disdainfully at her porridge and push it away, but took up her spoon and began to eat it, and went on eating it until her bowl was empty. "Tha got on well enough with that this mornin', didn't tha?" said Martha. "It tastes nice today," said Mary, feeling a little surprised herself. "It's the air of the moor that's given thee stomach for thy victuals," answered Martha. "It's lucky for thee that thou's got victuals as well as appetite. There's been 12 in our cottage as had the stomach and nothin' to put in it. You go on playin' you out of doors every day, and you'll get some flesh on your bones, and you won't be so yeller." "I don't play," said Mary. "I have nothing to play with." "Nothing to play with!" exclaimed Martha. "Our children plays with sticks and stones. They just runs about and shouts and looks at things." Mary did not shout, but she looked at things. There was nothing else to do. She walked round and round the gardens, and wandered about the paths in the park. One place she went to oftener than to any other. It was the long walk outside the gardens with the walls round them, There were bare flower beds on either side of it, and against the walls ivy grew thickly. There was one part of the wall where the creeping dark green leaves were more bushy than elsewhere. It seemed as if for a long time that part had been neglected. She had just paused and was looking up at a long spray of ivy swinging in the wind when she saw a gleam of scarlet and heard a brilliant chirp. "Oh," she cried out, "is it you? Is it you?" And it did not seem at all queer to her that she spoke to him as if she were sure that he would understand and answer her. He did answer. He twittered and chirped and hopped along the wall, as if he were telling her all sorts of things. It seemed to Mistress Mary as if she understood him too, though he was not speaking in words. Mary began to laugh, and as he hopped and took little flights along the wall, she ran after him. Poor little thin, sallow, ugly Mary. She actually looked almost pretty for a moment. "I like you, I like you," she cried out, pattering down the walk, and she chirped and tried to whistle, which last she did not know how to do in the least. At last he spread his wings and made a darting flight to the top of a tree, where he perched and sang loudly. That reminded Mary of the first time she had seen him. "It's in the garden no one can go into," she said to herself. "It's the garden without a door. He lives in there. How I wish I could see what it is like." She ran through the kitchen gardens again and out into the walk outside the long ivy-covered wall, and she walked to the end of it and looked at it, but there was no door. And then she walked to the other end, looking again, but there was no door. "It's very queer," she said. "Ben Weatherstaff said there was no door, and there is no door. But there must have been one 10 years ago, because Mr. Craven buried the key." She stayed out of doors nearly all day, and when she sat down to her supper at night, she felt hungry and drowsy and comfortable. "Why did Mr. Craven hate the garden?" she said. Martha sat down on the hearth herself without waiting to be asked. "Art thou thinking about that garden yet?" she said. "I knew thou would." "Why did he hate it?" Mary persisted. Martha tucked her feet under her and made herself quite comfortable. "Listen to the wind wuthering round the house," she said. "You could bear stand up on the moor if you was out on it tonight." Mary did not know what wuthering meant until she listened, and then she understood. It must mean that hollow, shuddering sort of roar, which rushed round and round the house, as if the giant no one could see were buffeting it and beating at the walls and windows to try to break in. Then Martha gave up her store of knowledge. "Mind," she said. "Mrs. Medlock said it's not to be talked about. His troubles are none servant's business, he says. But for the garden, he wouldn't be like he is. It was Mrs. Craven's garden that she had made when first they were married, and she just loved it. And none of the gardeners was ever let to go in. And she was just a bit of a girl, and there was an old tree with a branch bent like a seat on it, and she made roses grow over it, and she used to sit there. But one day when she was sitting there, the branch broke and she fell on the ground and was hurt so bad that next day she died. The doctors thought he'd go out of his mind and die too. That's why he hates it. No one's never gone in since. Mary did not ask any more questions. She looked at the red fire and listened to the wind wuthering. But as she was listening to the wind, she began to listen to something else. She did not know what it was, because at first she could scarcely distinguish it from the wind itself. It was a curious sound. It seemed almost as if a child were crying somewhere. "Do you hear anyone crying?" she said. Martha suddenly looked confused. "No," she answered. "It's the wind. Sometimes it sounds like as if someone was lost on the moor and wailing." "But listen," said Mary. "It's in the house, down one of those long corridors." And at that very moment, a door must have been opened somewhere downstairs, for a great rushing draft blew along the passage, and the door of the room they sat in was blown open with a crash. The light was blown out, and the crying sound was swept down the far corridor, so that it was to be heard more plainly than ever. "There," said Mary, "I told you so. It is someone crying, and it isn't a grown-up person." Martha ran and shut the door and turned the key. But before she did it, they both heard the sound of a door in some far passage shutting with a bang, and then everything was quiet. "It was the wind," said Martha stubbornly. "And if it wasn't, it was little Betty Butterworth, the scullery maid. She's had the toothache all day." But something troubled and awkward in her manner made Mistress Mary stare very hard at her. She did not believe she was speaking the truth. "The house has grown cold. The fire is a heap of white ash, and the corridors are stretching out into the dark, silent and miles long. Someone is weeping behind a locked door, and the moor wind is the only witness. Close your eyes and let the silence settle. Tomorrow the sun